I've gotten multiple requests basically asking, how do I move on to harder levels? So I put together a few tips to share with you guys to help improve your skill level, and hopefully this pushes you into higher difficulty songs. But first, let's talk about how do you define a hard song? Like, what makes it difficult for you? If you're having trouble answering this question, I want to say most likely that you haven't played a wide variety of songs yet. Ultimately, you aren't sure what your skill set is, what your strengths or your weaknesses are. You just haven't experienced these patterns yet. So, tip number one, play everything. If you're stuck in the hard folder and you're having trouble moving on to expert, play all the hard songs. Get every single one of those diamonds filled. Try your best efforts at full comboing as many songs as you can. Basically, what you're doing is exposing yourself to new patterns, different rhythms, and I know sometimes just listening to the previews, there will be times where the song's just not your cup of tea. And I get it. There's songs that I've full comboed the first time and never touched them again. But the point is, I've played it at least once, and that's the important part. So this brings me on to tip number 2. Playing every single song is no easy task. I understand. There's over 400 songs now in the game. And that's a lot of songs to go through. But the thing is, you don't have to do it all overnight. So instead, tip number 2, give yourself small, obtainable goals. This is something I personally like to do during my sessions, and depending on your skill level, you can scale it up or down. But I like to tell myself something along the lines of, oh, today I need to full combo 5 new songs, or I need to make sure I pass 10 new level 16s today. I know it might seem silly at first, but doing these little tasks over time will build up into a huge feat, and seeing that gives me way more motivation to keep playing. And that's the important thing here. The best way to improve is to just keep playing. But rhythm games are a grind, and I'm not gonna lie, some days are going to be rough, where you'll feel like you haven't improved in forever, and it's honestly discouraging. But looking back at all these small victories, like, oh, I passed a bunch of new songs today, or I got a new FC on a level 20. You can use these as motivation to help push you to keep going. Now, moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is going to sound a bit weird, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability. A lot of people have told me that they struggle with holds and sliders, and to be honest, I struggle with them too. And really, it's not because they're above your skill level or anything, but because there's a slight disconnect from where you're looking versus where your fingers need to be. Ask any well-seasoned rhythm gamer, where do you focus on? What are you looking at? And 90% of the time, they're staring at the top of the lanes. This gives them time to be able to react when the notes come down the lane reaching the judgment line. But sometimes when a slider comes up and they want you to move abruptly, because of where you're staring at, you might accidentally move your finger a lot sooner than you need to, which will just straight up result in a miss. This is the number one killer of full combos for me. It's always the holds, especially the master chart of Lost and Found. So how do we correct this? Well, tip number 3, practice lowering your focus to the middle of the lane. Now, I'm not saying to do this the entire song. Once you play a song enough times, you'll start to memorize sections, especially if you keep missing. You'll remember them a lot. If there's a section I struggle with that's coming up, I'll tell myself to look slightly lower so I'm 100% confirming what my fingers are actually doing. And to make things easier, I'll drop my note speed by 0.1. So normally I play at 10.8. If I'm having trouble with a certain section, I'll play the song at 10.7 to get the muscle memory down. And this doesn't have to only apply to holds and sliders. Some tricky patterns become a lot easier when you're actually looking at it, instead of just relying on your peripherals. And the last thing I want to talk about. When you first started playing, most likely the thing holding you back was being able to hit notes fast enough. Since lower end charts aren't really super complicated and don't have a ton of wonky patterns and rhythms, and then to get to this point, you've probably trained your finger speed and reaction time to be a lot faster. So tip number 4 is to slow down. I know this is contrary to what you've been taught and what you've been practicing up until this point, but hear me out. A lot of people just assume in order to play higher level songs, you just gotta keep going faster and faster. And while that may be true for some high level songs, it's not really something you can apply to every song. Let's take trills for example. Look at this chart, Tandemo Wonders Expert 27. A lot of people have trouble with the ending trills. because the ending is a little slower than what you've already been playing. All the trills you've been doing up until this point were 16th notes. And without going too deep into actual music theory, the ending trills are what rhythm gamers call 12th notes, which are slower. Most intermediate players will still try to hit them as 16ths and not even realize why it's not working out for them. Basically, you have to slow yourself down. Just because you can go fast doesn't mean it's needed for every single chart. If I'm ever playing a chart that I know has slower trills, I'll lift my fingers higher than I normally would for any other pattern and force myself to hit the notes slower. Now, this can be applied to other patterns as well, not just trills. Learning how high and low to lift your fingers for different timings can be the difference between passing a song or picking up too many misses during a stream and potentially failing the song. Anyways, that's all the tips I have for today. Hopefully you were able to learn something, and even if you didn't, I still appreciate you for sticking around and watching the video. For those who are new to the channel, hi, my name is Jeff, or you can call me Loud Loser. I play rhythm games and I love making these types of videos. So if you have an idea or a topic you'd like me to talk about, feel free to leave a comment down below. I have a ton more videos just like this one that I'm working on. So if you haven't already, definitely consider subscribing to get notified when those videos come out. Thank you guys so much for watching. And here's a video YouTube thinks you might enjoy.